but I'm trying not to say the same thing as everyone else. So that was my highlights. The bus tour obviously was another highlight, but I can talk about that later.
And so my highlight was the after party. No, no, I'm kidding.
That was my highlight. Usman at the after party. That was
we all
my
had
highlight.
a fun time, but I think it's really important that we have fun too, especially because we are dealing with some really tricky, wicked problems, long-term sort of, systemic issues. But having said that, look, it's been, for me, I was personally really grateful just to be able to see generations of social entrepreneurs, and generation in the sense of, having, for example, Lucy and Jesse and Ben and people like that who were involved in the School for Social Entrepreneurs back in the day, to, that, we've all learned from, and was one of the reasons why Catalysr started, and then seeing some of our amazing alumni who were there, who are also networking and doing fantastic work. And it was just sort of really seeing social enterprise in action, to your point earlier. I think I personally, did not attend a lot of sessions, and that's just because I found the opportunity to connect with so many other individuals was a great opportunity, rather than sort of going to some of the other sessions. But I think it was a choose your own adventure kind of thing as well. Like, some people decided, they wanted to go to some sessions. There was like social procurement. There was things around, for example, impact investing or philanthropy, or, particular, I guess, topic areas. What I really liked were some sessions around failure as well. So failure and success together. Oftentimes we don't talk about failure enough. So it was really great to hear from many social entrepreneurs really sort of owning up and saying, we failed a million times and now we're sort of trying to make it. And so that was really great that, we also had that, not just humility, but also vulnerability, and we're able to share that across with each other. I think it was the first time we had it as a hybrid conference as well. So it was really interesting. And I think one thing that, like we all learned from was, yes, we were connected with people who were online, but we didn't really have, we didn't really do as much with, I guess, the sort of online community. They probably were living in their own universe. So I'm not sure how to broach that. And I don't think there's an easy answer to that. But I felt like everyone else who was there in person, we felt really strongly connected with each other. And you didn't really have to go and, introduce yourself or break the ice. People would just come and sort of chat to you and be like, you already sort of felt that connection with each other. So I really felt that warm feeling in my heart that, it was a fantastic community, and really grateful to be there as well.
Yeah, it was awesome. So, and I guess you probably got a little bit of a sense of scale for those who weren't there from the video, but it was about 1,500 in the main room, and then, what was it, 5 tracks for most of the sessions other than that. So there's a lot going on. There was a lot of FOMO because, out of all of these different rooms, which one to be in. And the digital pass, I'll do a plug for World Forum. You can still buy the digital pass to watch the recording. So I had a look at it yesterday, and I think it was like 14 quid. It was actually in pounds. So it was a bit more than that for the digital pass, but just to watch the recording, it's less now. And the main ballroom was recorded, and the auditorium, but I don't think rooms 1, 2, 3 were recorded from memory. So what happened there is very secret, but if you want to see what happened in those other 2 rooms, what happened in that room? Apparently it definitely stays in that room. We're sworn to secrecy. So it was about 1,500 in the room, and then it was about another 1,500 online during those 2 days as well.
Including 16 girls from Afghanistan.
I
just loved. That was just like the greatest thing. Yeah.
So yeah, there's going to be stories told, for a long time after this as well, which I think is great as well. Great to hear some of your reflections and highlights, and keep going with those. But a question I'm always curious about is, was there anything that you heard, that you experienced, that challenged the way you see the world and thought about things, things that might have sort of refined or challenged your thinking? You're thinking about things a bit differently now because of something you sort of heard or experienced.
I was just going to peek at my notes because I wrote stuff down and it was brilliant, and I'm just trying to remember what it was. So you guys start.
That thing for me was very much around a lot of the messages that came out from a lot of the speakers, particularly Dylan Alcott, and humour was a massive part of this forum, which was just awesome. He was hilarious. But what came out for me was boldness and and the permission that you don't need to just be bold, because this is what this sector's or this movement is all about. And for me personally, I think I've, I don't know whether it's because I've not been part of this, world as intimately as I am now for a while, been sort of on the other side of the fence. And there's still a lot of, unspoken rules there, and they seem to just be broken down in this space. And if you're not being bold and you're not, which is, around innovating, and you don't need permission to do that. You just do it. And that was huge for me. I know maybe it's not for everyone else, but that was massive. And just maybe it's where I am right now. But yeah, just be bold. And the way Dylan Alcott said that he's buoyant, he's always buoyant. And that just sort of swept through the room. It was just contagious and yeah, beautiful. So yeah, boldness.
And since you're reflecting on that, I'll ask another follow-up, which is, because of that, what are you going to do differently?
Yeah, for me, it's been around we've got a hybrid structure, and there's a governance, obviously there's a lot of governance around that. But it's kind of knowing, okay, if the good governance is in place, then that's taken care of. And in every other way, just be bold, like, push the envelope, push the boundaries. But also a lot of it's about a personal leadership journey for me. Like, I think that's what I've taken out of the forum mostly, is just to, stand strong in what the vision is and what the impact goals are. And, as 9,000 people at the Aware Super Theatre last night with Julia Gillard were really energised by, was just go for it. We don't have any time to waste, and you can't shrink here at all. So, yeah.
Do you want me to speak? So I guess for me, and there's a lot of things, a lot of learnings that came out, but one thing that personally challenged me is something that, I guess is sort of fairly obvious and all of us know, which is, how many women do we have that are starting businesses, particularly social enterprises? And that number is higher than, for example, in the tech sector or some of the other places. But we were on this panel that I was sort of moderating, and one of the people on that panel was talking about migrant women in business. And what she talked about was that 3% of all business owners are migrant women. And so that is really, really low. And yes, like with our programs and the work we do at Catalysr, we always, try and support more women, but structurally as well, there's still a lot of barriers that exist for women participating in entrepreneurship and sort of starting their businesses, social enterprises. And for me, that was like one of those things that, like, how can we do that better? What are the different ways in which we can engage, and particularly even learn from some women who are doing that work and supporting other women as well. So that was personally something that I'm sort of taking on as a challenge and trying to do something about. Yeah, that was my sort of personal, professional learning, I guess.
Do you know how you do something about that yet, or is that something you're still percolating on?
So have some ideas. For example, having some of our alumni. We've got actually an amazing alum here, Marjorie, who's sitting here in the audience, which just, why not? But we've also got, we're thinking about getting some of our alumni, particularly women migrant entrepreneurs, on our board. That's one of the areas where, we look at how do we structurally make our programs more accessible to women and be more diverse, which I know we are an organization focused on diversity. So that's something we should be doing. But I think the other thing is we also should be looking at, more leadership as well. We've already got our entrepreneurs residents are mostly female migrant entrepreneurs. But, what are the other ways in which you can improve our programs and our sort of structures and things like that? So don't have exact answers yet, but that's something that we want to go on a journey and try to figure it out.
I guess my biggest challenge I'd identified is the importance, certainly around my work in government, of political will. That is either a make or break for a lot of this stuff. So I think, and listening to other parts of the world. So Scotland, they're totally on board, they're passing legislation, they're doing all sorts of amazing things. And at a local government level, Banyule Council have got a strategy and it's all endorsed. And so they're doing very similar things to we're doing in Parramatta, but theirs is loud and proud. Parramatta is me, which is loud and proud, but it's not quite the same thing. So I think that personally presented a challenge, but listening to, you know, the conversation around the national strategy and those sorts of things gave me some hope that we will be moving in the right direction with that stuff in Australia. So that's totally cool. But I think at a local government level, we still have some challenges there. I guess in terms of what I'm going to do about that sort of stuff, I think I had a moment, and Andrew will talk about, well, he spotted the moment. It was actually in a meeting about social procurement, and someone from Buy Canada completely flipped my whole approach to social procurement, in that I was talking about social procurement as a thing, whereas he was talking about talk about the impact. So if you've got employment strategies and they say, you know, how many people you want to be employed, you say, oh, well, we can reach that if you do this, which is social procurement. And so it was actually a much more political way of actually approaching social procurement, which has huge potential, as we all know, for building the social enterprise economy, but also making a difference. So, you know, I'm not the most political person in the world in that sense. And so that was a real learning for me. I knew that politics is an issue, but I actually found a solution to one of the problems, which was super. I know. I am a gesticulator. This is what I do. I should really put it down.
And Usman's in the splash zone.
Maybe it's just multitasking. I don't know. Sorry. Yes.
Awesome. Great hearing a bunch of your reflections and insights. And hopefully everyone got the memo when I put it on the event page and in the reminder email that there's going to be an opportunity to share as well. So anyone that just freaked out, anyone else that would like to share any of their highlights or reflections, things that challenge the way that you think about things, things that you'll do differently because of what you experienced? And we've got roving mic action. Yes, and Canberra and everyone online. So feel free to come off. We won't moderate it, I don't think. You can talk over each other to start and then just be polite after that. So any questions online? Someone came off mute. Was that Bob?
Hi there, Ben. Yes.
Go for it, mate.
One of the things I found interesting was the support network for the ones who've been able to scale through philanthropy network or foundations, and really the overall support, and Lucy mentioned this as well, through the intermediaries as an example. So for me, it just completely blew my mind seeing the difference between the small and the micros versus ones which are much larger, and the support that they've received. I mean, there was I think it's called Daba from Cape York, and they are up to 20 million revenue as an example. And they're greedy. You can't see my shirt here, but they're greedy for good. Yeah, so they had the support of Westpac Foundation as an example, but it's that continuing support in the multi levels. Even Whitebox with Minto Ellison as an example. So yeah, so that was eye-opener for me.
Thanks, mate. You're on the full big screen when you're speaking, in case you didn't notice that.
I just saw that. I was a bit scared.
I have the power of the remote. Who was waving? Tiff. No. Anitra dobbed you in. She said you were fully up for it. Who was that? Laura? That's all right. Come off mute, and I think we should still hear you.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Hello.
Hello.
It's so good to see everybody. It's been such an exciting trip, hasn't it? And my God, what a trip. So I have something little to share. I don't know if anybody here has any ancestry connected to Iran or Persia. but I'm hoping you heard the news that her name was heard and we're shaking it off like a flu. If that doesn't make sense to you, I'll share a video later, but this isn't the time or space to, you know, touch this happy stuff. But I just wanted to know that we heard, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. You might, if you can chuck something in the chat if you want.
I shall. I just need to find the video because it's pretty special. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know. Jess, do you want to swap seats? Just because I know how much you love the stage.
God, you make me sound like a wanker. Which I probably am one. Just to pick up, and Usman, thank you for mentioning School for Social Entrepreneurs. One experience I had at the forum was to reconnect with board members, ex-CEOs, staff and students of the School for Social Entrepreneurs. And I wanted to share our secret sauce because I think it's an idea that needs to live on. And the idea of the School for Social Entrepreneurs is that we incubated people and community, not businesses, because we trusted that people would develop businesses and businesses can come and go, but people, when they care about something, they don't stop caring. They will care for a lifetime. And if the business doesn't work out, they'll go and do an amazing job in government or in council or in community or in private enterprise. And our method was action learning, which is learning through problems. And we had this phrase that we used in action learning, which is comrades in adversity. And there was a lot of love that came out when we were comrades sitting around a table and holding each other up. And there's about 450 graduates of that program that are, you know, scattered to the winds. And I saw a lot of them at the forum, and it was just lovely to see that those seeds have you know, grown some fruit. And I guess I'll close by saying I wonder what spaces we have now for learning, deep learning and deep connection, to like hold those spaces for failure and celebrate those successes. So thanks.
You can stay there if you want. Thanks, Jess. The legendary SSE. It must have been pretty awesome having that reunion as well, especially at the forum. Any other highlights? Questions for people who had highlights? You want to swap?
No, that's fine. I'm definitely not swapping. Ben's doing an awesome job there. I want to pick up on something that Mel said that I think is really a really special opportunity for us in Australia, being a Canadian who's, you know, second generation Chinese and part of the Commonwealth, part of our shared colonization story. So if I can draw from that and a decolonizing work that we can do together here. When Mel said about the way they'd woven the stories and the people through the forum, I was so glad that you picked up on that. I remember sitting with my friend Adrian. He doesn't come out from behind the scenes very much, but you know, he's been a bit of a mentor to me. And really early on, his message always was, don't put us in a room together and say that's the Aboriginal space. Okay, like, and that's where you guys go. Like, just weave it through everything you do in the program. And I haven't been very hopeful about that happening as someone of color. I don't really like identifying that way either, but that's another story. But as seeing that actually happen authentically in the best way that we could as this community really moved me to see. I keep thinking of it as the one opportunity from all the different countries that we're coming from and experiences and life experiences and ethnicities, that this is the one opportunity we can have to create a really important change for this nation. And I accept that as a citizen of this country now, whose citizenship certificate is signed by Peter Dutton. So I'm looking at that and I'm going like, I accept that as one of my, like the mission for me that is most important in this country. And to see it sort of affirmed in this way and see Letitia, you know, on that stage, like just beautifully vulnerable for everybody there, you know, and meet all the people that we've did for we did some video series that we hope will endure. There's that video that after India spoke that I got to work on, and I went and saw some fires with Victor and then, you know, caught up with Rowan and the KLC guys. It's just, that stuff is blowing my mind as a different way, but then seeing it on the screens for us and kind of seeing the culture creative in an event, you're actually making all these decisions about what culture you're creating together and what values you're celebrating together. So see that there on this incredible platform really moved me and reaffirmed like I've got a really important role to play to make space for this really important conversation. And, you know, we have a referendum happening. We have this part of our community that we really can lift up together. And that just really inspires me and makes me want to get behind that and can bring us all together for something. So I want to share that. Thank you for seeing that in the program.
That's beautiful, Mikey. I think for me, when the young Maori activist India was talking, I felt really confronted. It was really interesting that as a white middle-aged woman, I was essentially irrelevant to her because I had done the damage. And that's, she needs to call that. And that's fine because I can sit here feeling like I'm doing good, but actually I don't know what the hell I'm talking about from a personal experience. And so it made me have to think, actually, what am I doing in that space? Where do I sit in that? And I think that's powerful because I just assume I can help. Government, you know, privilege, all those sorts of things. But actually, is that needed? Is that what we need? How do we fit in? So it's challenged me to think about it differently because it does need to be authentic. And so I have to work out what my authentic is in that space.
I'll add to that as well. I agree with you as well. I think, yeah, looking at the artwork and everything else and how the whole, having the First Nations people and particularly Indigenous people in Australia weaved into that was fantastic. But I think one thing that sort of brought up that I was able to see with one of our actually alumni organisations at Catalysr was this organisation called Sari Collective that are supporting South Asian Australians really deal with their identity. And they were thinking about their identity and also their sort of shared history of colonisation with the Indigenous people. And what does that mean? And how can they even start talking about that in their own context as well? So it's really interesting. And you know, I like the work that you were doing that was not just directly, obviously, for the Indigenous community and for everyone, but also like has sort of those ripple effects as well. So thank you for doing that. It was really great.
You had your hand up a moment ago. I did. Did you withdraw it?
Yes, I don't need that thing.
Of course you do. Otherwise, people online won't be able to hear you.
Oh, okay. My question was to Mikey, understanding what you've now understood and what you felt there. What's following on from the question that Ben asked our panel, and yeah, what will you now do differently? What will you do with that experience of what you were exposed to internally that can now drive something?
Well, without making it too complicated, that does start a big conversation. I mean, we have to do it on so many fronts, but I think it's just about looking around you at first and asking, what relationship can I have with an Aboriginal person? And just as a person to start with, but I guess seeking that connection in place is something that we all need to do. That actually, I might sound a little woo-woo here, but it's sort of, you got to find your own indigeneity. I've heard that word used before, like we all have it in us. It's a sense of place that's connecting to it, and that might be through the people that you meet and the community that you're in, but then it's also, I mean, that's, for me, it's a spiritual thing, obviously, but answering that question makes you look where you are and the people around you for co-creation or working together or whatever, you know, political terms, closing the gap. You know, it's like, okay, you know, so like whatever level we're dealing with it or whatever language we're dealing with, you can still find a relationship where you are and nurture it and listen more than you speak.
Nice segue to the hand off the mic.
I'm going to add one more bit that one of the sessions that I attended was about creative arts and social enterprise. And there was a beautiful, beautiful panel. So Danny from Black Sheep Collective in England. There was Matthew, I think his name was, from an organisation in New Zealand. And then there was, and I can't believe I can't remember his name right now, from Magpie Goose. And Jody and Tom, you will remember, and Nate, you will remember our friend John from our household, who's like a, you know, full-on crazy art dude, right? You know, as you expect, these kind of slightly wacky. But he, you know, it's question time, and he said, all three of you, I want to work with you. Can I work with you? And the guy from Magpie Goose went, who are you? And he kind of went, I'm kind of joking, but I'm kind of not, because the Indigenous relationship is, the Indigenous kind of perspective is, the relationship is actually the work. It's not the outcome that you're doing. So I need to build a relationship with you in order to then create something. So you can't just say, can I work with you? That's not actually the way it works. And I think that's really important for people to understand in terms of our relationship with, you know, I can't just step in to being
Got to
Indigenous
build a
and
relationship
their
and earn
stuff.
trust.
Have to, oh yeah, absolutely. And that's really important. But the fact that it was called out was great. So.
A bit more to the same conversation. Yeah, and just picking up on your point too, that it's less about action and it's about listening. And you know, I had the enormous pleasure of interviewing Dr. Miriam Rose Ungermer, the woman from up in the Northern Territory who wrote a lot about Dadirri, and it is deep listening to the earth beneath our feet and everything around us and other human beings. And actually that's another thing that came out of the whole forum for me, was that we're starting to get a little bit more comfortable with that idea of not having to act, of just first listening. And I think that was evident too throughout the whole forum of how many people with lived experience are now you know, leading the change, and not, if they're not leading the change, they're a huge chorus behind the change as well. And we're finally listening to those voices, which, you know, is probably decades too late, but it's here, and it's kind of like it's arrived, you know, in a cataclysmic way, which is awesome.
Greg, on the way, mate.
I just wanted to share, it was one of the best conferences that I've ever been to last week. As an Aboriginal person, it was really great to see how many other Aboriginal people were there. Also on the Indigenous organising committee, it was really great to see it all come together and see how much Aboriginal people and culture and social enterprise are already interwoven with everything. And these kind of conversations is what it's really about, having these conversations and then being proactive and looking at how we take this to the next stage. Yeah, for me, it sort of was really showcasing as a whole across Australia, but in particular for Aboriginal businesses, really creating a starting point, or not really starting point, but a good platform to really build on the Indigenous social enterprise space across Australia. Yeah, and that's part of what we're looking at. How do we now take that on to the next stage as part of the organising committee, and which I was keen on, not just being part of doing that just for the forum. How do we build on that afterwards? And couldn't have been a better platform, how everything came together and how mindful everyone was. Yeah, so I just want to thank you for these kind of conversations and continuing this and being in the forefront, which was part of the conference. Yeah.
More questions, comments? I think Tom has got one.
I have a genuine question. And yeah, not even with a proper question mark at the end, not even a comment, and then asking people what they think of my idea or something. I want to know what you guys wish had been discussed but wasn't.
Oh, question without notice.
I have one. As always.
I've got one thing. And it was touched on, but probably it wasn't unpacked enough for me, is that the tension that I still feel the movement, social enterprise movement, has with being the kind of poor cousin to normal business or, you know, mainstream business, and how the funding structures are still kind of paternalistic in that way as well. So I wished we would have had much more time to unpack that, not just a conversation about philanthropy either. I think it's way bigger than that. Philanthropy is just part of it. But yeah, this, you know, that's it.
That's a hard. You go. I'm trying to still think.
So I did not attend many sessions. So there's a lot of things that I wish now. I think one area that I think personally we need to think a lot more about, and it was mentioned in different places, but I don't think we as a sector haven't really wrapped our head around, is climate change. And it's here. Just today, look outside, what's happening. It's sort of every day facing us. In the last 2-3 years, it's just been incredible, you know, looking at the fires and the floods and everything. And because of the scale of the challenge, we sort of avoid it, unfortunately. So I feel like that's something that needs to play a more central role in when we think about social enterprise, and not just purely from a sort of climate solutions angle, but also from a climate justice angle, because, you know, we talked about Action Station earlier, but there are a lot of climate solutions. There's a lot happening in clean tech, but there's not as much in climate justice. So I think that would be an area that would love to see how a social enterprise movement and us, particularly in Australia, talk more about that as well.
And I was stoked about that. Sorry, just briefly on the B Corp month this year. I was stoked that was actually the focal point and the theme was actually listening to the voices of people who are most impacted by climate change, and that climate justice has to be front and center. You know, the whole reason we do climate action is about people. It's not really about protecting the rock we live on. It's about having an awesome place to live. So the climate justice action, I completely agree with. Sorry, I cut someone off.
Definition of climate justice well, no, she's asking you. No. I don't really know what it means. But does anybody really know? Like, I could try have a crack, but there's somebody who's clear.
As we address and alleviate climate impacts, we have to do so with a view to a historical and existing injustice, because it could be really easy that we all, you know, move to higher ground, but who ends up, what kind of accommodation and do we end up with on higher ground? The people who've been swept aside, you know, the people who've been forced off their island, whose country has disappeared. So it's the idea that we have to build this new, more sustainable world in a way that is also more just and equal than the current world. I think. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yeah. Further advice. I think that's also an interesting thing about the environmental people not really being social enterprise. That's a whole other conversation, but we're all doing some good, right?
I think Tim, did you have something to add, Lucy?
Oh, I was just going to say that I wish that there'd been a bit more conversation about how do we raise general awareness about social enterprise. It's a real challenge that I have, is how do you actually talk about it in a big sense to everybody. And obviously we're trying to do the national campaign and those sorts of things, but I didn't hear from other people what that tipping point was. What was that thing that you did that made everyone suddenly go, oh, because I do that, but on an individual level. As soon as you explain what it is, everyone's like, oh my God, I love it. I'm so on board. But I can only have so many conversations in a day. You know, so that I wish that had been discussed a little bit more. That would have been kind of cool.
And I'm going to chime in as well. The one thing that in answer to that, it was definitely talked about in part, and it was sort of implicit in a bunch of things, but leader and founder wellbeing wasn't really called out. And I think we've still got a lot of system and ecosystem and ways that we say what a social enterprise is and isn't, which actually means we're actively incentivizing and creating conditions where, especially early stage social enterprise founders, actually don't look after their well-being. They don't pay themselves. You know, they don't have a financial model that works. They end up broke. They end up burnt out. And I think, you know, to me, that's a big systemic thing we need to do more about. It was implicit in a bunch of stuff, but I think we need to actually change some systemic levers about how we even talk about ourselves as an ecosystem and movement to make sure that is properly looked after.
What did you call it right at the beginning?
Sorry? Leader and founder wellbeing. So personal sustainability of all the people that are, you know, doing this work.
Yeah, such a good call, Ben. And that was another thing in my own personal leadership kind of light bulb moments there, that it's part of being bold. Like, no, I'm a single parent with 2 young children. I cannot drive myself into the ground for this cause, no matter how noble it is, and to structure everything the way that I have to. Like, if I don't pay myself, there's no one else paying the bills. So I've just had to structure everything like that from the start, but then just to own it too and go, that's fucking okay. And we don't have to have this impoverished mentality that to solve other people's problems, or even, you know, even if it's through lived experience and you're supporting people that you actually understand what they've been through. And I can't aspire to something different for the, you know, the beneficiaries of our work if I can't live that myself. So yeah, thanks for that.
We've got to put our own mask on first, the one that you breathe through. We're running out of time.
There were
Hands are
two
flying up
quick-
all over the place now.
two quick noticings, and I'll hand it to the gentleman here.
All right, and I've got Tim at the back and I've got Dave here as well. So
2 quick noticings from my end was, one, Dylan talked about invisible disability, and I noticed that there was a lack of visible disability participation, if I could call it that. And then a second session I went to, which was about boards and governance, was called Pale, Male and Stale, which I thought was a pretty snappy title. Sorry, apologies to the people who put that wonderful workshop together. It was fantastic, but we barely scratched the surface because we had no time or space to talk about how do you do the workaround when you've got a pale, male, stale on board. Okay.
I like the way you introduced what I was about to say. I'm about to talk about invisible disabilities. So considering Google was one of the sponsors, I would have loved to have seen something done for the hearing impaired. We had Auslan translators, but there's only about 30,000 people in the country, according to the Deaf Society, that use Auslan. I've got, some of the people know, I've got half an ear. I don't have a right ear, and I've got literally half a left ear, and I use tech a lot. In a lot of rooms, I would have loved to have seen speech to text. Breakout room 2 was dreadful. And, you know, I could barely hear what the speakers were saying. Yet we had Google as a sponsor who do really good speech to text. I would have loved to have seen that tech used for people with, you know, severe hearing impairments. So it was a great opportunity to showcase it and to go back to the invisible disability discussion, because people just don't know. So they traditionally will go, we've got an Auslan translator. And I go, great, how many people in the room have actually used Auslan? Whereas how many people in the room have got a severe hearing disability? Probably 30, 40, 50 times as many. So I thought there was an opportunity that was missed. Yeah. Thank you.
thanks, Brendan. And Tim, who's been waiting the longest.
Thanks everyone for your highlights and questions. Lucy, you mentioned a couple of sort of experiences or moments where your thinking was flipped or where you were confronted by, you know, your assumptions being challenged. I'd be really interested to hear from others who attended experiences that they had that were similar to that, and if they could describe a bit of that where your assumption about something was challenged.
You got a mic? Who's going to answer now?
No, just me being confronted. Sorry.
Nothing from Mel and Usman?
No, it wasn't so much an assumption, I guess, that was challenged, but just that when India spoke on that session around, you know, her session on the climate, yeah, I was deeply confronted, like you guys as well, and brought to ground in a way, like, you know, being in the social impact space. You know, the climate conversation for me is, yeah, being kind of faded into the background a little bit, even though I'm seeing it with my eyes every day. Yeah, so that was deeply confronting to our humanity again. So yeah, but not necessarily an assumption that I had.
I guess for me, so I attended a session on philanthropy, and some of you might have been there as well. And I guess one of the assumptions that I held prior to that session was that some of the philanthropists just don't get it. They know that, I mean, they have a bit of an understanding that there's obviously a power imbalance between, you know, social enterprises or not-for-profits, and then there's philanthropy, and you know, like they've got, I guess, certain things that they want to meet. And, you know, this is, I guess, sort of been my own personal experience dealing with different types of philanthropists with different foundations. And obviously not all of them are the same. But essentially what got challenged was that someone asked that question around, well, you know, how do you actually manage that power imbalance, and are you aware of it, and how do you sort of do that? And actually they were more aware and actually doing something about it, which was really refreshing to see. So I think I had to sort of update my own thinking about that as well, and not to sort of make assumptions about that, and actually start to have that conversation, because obviously they're working under particular sort of constraints as well. But then at the same time, many of them do understand that and do understand how do you, and there are ways in which you can work together to try and sort of, you know, find a middle ground. And probably the same, I guess you could speak about the impact investment piece too, but yeah.
All right, thank you. And Dave, I believe, has got the last question. So it's going to be a ripper.
No pressure there. Yeah. To your point, what crystallized for me was a really subtle comment by Beck Scott when she was, Beck Scott's the CEO of Street, and yeah, doing a whole bunch of things in food systems. And she was interviewing Kai from Regeneration Melbourne, and she said for her, it starts with self, social enterprise, and then system. And for me, that really resonated, because it is that inner journey, you know, constantly trying to work on yourself and how you show up in the world and interact with others. And then, you know, the next layer to that is the social enterprise that I'm involved in. And then how does that work across the system, physical activity system that I work in? So that was really great for me as a light bulb moment. And I was lucky enough to go on the Aboriginal walk, which was part of the road trip, which was just incredible, but very confronting, because it really hit home for me how much damage and hurt that we've actually done. And the lady who took the tour, you spoke about her family and the generations and what we've done to like the country, and it made me realize how much I don't know. And yeah, I've got a lot to learn in that space as well. Yeah.
Thanks, mate. Tom has got something to add.
I mean, I guess just building off something I was thinking about with my question and then your question is, I wish I'd heard a little bit more confronting content. I wish we'd had a little bit more of people speaking more directly to some of the gaps and inequalities in the sector. And I guess I wouldn't have, you know, I didn't go to many sessions either, because it's kind of more about the people. But one I did go to, because it's an area of particular interest to mine, it was a panel on impact investment, which I thought gave one of the worst, most misleading portrayals of the impact investment sector in Australia I've heard in a while, because it was a complete fantasy. It was a completely theoretical map of mostly people who don't exist doing things no one is doing. But in theory, there's this style of investor, and in theory, there's this style of impact investment. But no one on the panel was prepared to say, no one's doing this right now. This is what we need, but don't have. And so I worry that what some early stage founders often walk away from those conversations with is so excited about all these amazing impact investors who are out there who love investing in high impact, highly risky early stage enterprises. And no one's doing that, in fact, which is a problem we need to solve. But it's hard to talk about the problem if we're pretending that the gap doesn't exist. And so that was just one particular one that is my area of great interest and a personal bugbear, but I wonder if there were similar things in other people's area of greatest interest. I think certainly in some topics there was some really strong truth-telling, but in that particular panel there was not.
Marjorie has something she wants to add. Where were the hands early?
So I went to the verification and certification process, session. If anyone else, did anyone else go to that? And I remember there was a lady at the back who is First Nations, and she's a lawyer. She started a social enterprise and a charity as well. And she asked, like, well, why do First Nations own like businesses? Why do we have to just like prove ourselves as social entrepreneurs? Because the nature of what we're doing is a social enterprise. So yeah, she asked that to the panel, and they didn't really have an answer for her. The room just went silent, like slow. Silent clapping for me, and it was like, yes, someone answered that. I mean, I know the lady from Social Trades Australia was like, oh, we're doing a lot of collaboration, and she did acknowledge that when whoever decided that social enterprises had to be certified back in 2015, she kind of acknowledged the fact that they didn't really take that into consideration. And then one of the panelists was from consulting GHD, and then she said, oh, when they do, I mean, and we don't know how much they work with First Nations owned businesses, but when she said that when they do, they don't ask them for that tick, their certification. And then I was just thinking as I was walking, actually before I walked out, I did go up to the Social Traders Australia lady and asked her about, you know, other things like accessibility, because I work with a lot of refugee and asylum seeker entrepreneurs whose English is not their first language. I mean, it's all in English. A lot of them are social entrepreneurs themselves. They hire refugees and people seeking asylum to work at their businesses, but they have no idea. They don't know about Social Traders Australia. And then, so they miss out on that as well. And then she is like, oh, that's really good feedback. Email me again. And let me know. I'm like, cool. That's not my job, but you know, anyway. And then, so then when I was walking out of the room, I started chatting to this fellow who is First Nations, and he told me, like, I didn't even know how to get certified. I've only been running this for 6 months, and I just look really like, what am I going to do now? You know? Yeah, that's just my comment. And I said to him, don't worry about it. We're not certified, but then now that SECNA has this partnership with Social Traders Australia, we're going to work on it because I don't have to pay. Yeah.
For the first year.
Sorry, I'm usually pretty loud. That the woman from Scotland, though, because when people didn't answer the question, yeah, she actually called it out and said, I don't think you've actually answered her question. Would you like to try again? Right? I mean, so I thought that, and that was one of the things I think was most striking is with some of the questions and how much you saw the support within, right? It wasn't just the panelists, like it was really a feeling of true democratization of everybody being in it together. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. That's almost a little sideways segue into our topic for next month, which I'll talk about in a moment. Before we say thanks to our panelists, anyone online got anything really burning that you'd like to ask or comment on?
Me only.
And that's a no. Good. Awesome. Unless you haven't found the unmute button just yet. So, yep, I think we're good. So a big thanks to our panelists, Lucy, Usman, and Mel. And as part of thanks, I can't do this with two hands. There we go. Mike is going to distribute a little speaker thanks from Welcome Merchant. Margie was our first speaker last month. So that's a little thanks for.
So those are from East African Sisters. It's a Somali Ethiopian owned company down in Naarm in Melbourne, and Syrian Nut Cake, also known as Hirise, and I know I didn't say that properly, so I'm so sorry to the Arabic-speaking people around here.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for that. I would say that, you know, most of you did a lot of the speaking, so if you want to share some of this, we can do it after as well. I feel bad of just taking it.
And you were walking around mostly during the World Forum with a massive box of baklava. Like, he was not doing sessions, he was just making friends with randoms, bribing them with awesome treats. Excellent. So please thank Lucy, Usman, and Mel. You can hang out there. So to wrap up, we won't do the video because we're running a little bit behind time, but is there somewhere people can see the rural wrap-up video?
Yeah. There's just a moment there. I've just come back from Beechworth. There was a follow-on event called the Royal Gathering, which was really fun as well in Beechworth. I'm really tired though right now because I've just got back. It'll be online at the Acre webpage. So it's something, and I think that's something for us here being so great about the city of Sydney, but looking at the rest of the state and Canberra. Hey, Canberra. you're not there anymore. You know, that's just like, it's a look into a window of another world outside of the cities where great work's happening too. So check it out in Iker.
Can you share the link to that and circulate it to everyone?
We can. I just need to get somewhere where it's public. Oh, it's on there, Acre. Awesome. So thanks for coming to our second one. I hope you'll also come to our third one, which is the 3rd of November. And the topic is going to be demystifying business for good. So, and this one's going to be not here, so don't turn up here on the 3rd of November, because you'll probably just knock on a door with no one answering. We're going to be going to Seed Spaces, to Abby's place, into a lounge room. This event's also part of New South Wales Small Business Month as well. So we're looking to go broad beyond kind of people already know about social enterprise. It'll be published out on the New South Wales website. I'm trying to get sign language and lip reading at the same time, and I'm not good at either. So yell it out, mate. Anitra? What are you pointing at Anitra for? Yes, and thanks to City of Sydney for their ongoing support. We did it at the start.
Yeah, but no, you can put this on the What's On website.
Oh yes, is that what you're saying? Yeah, okay, awesome.
Put it on there, and then it might get picked up to go in one of the newsletters that go out weekly and monthly, and it goes out to like 40,000 plus people.
Awesome. If it gets picked up.
And if you submit it and you've got a link, send the link to me, and I will.
You can promote it. Call some favors.
And call some favors and see if
Awesome.
we can get it included. I can't guarantee that, but I can ask.
So I did ask Abby, can we stretch to about 100? And she nodded and smiled, like, kind of like, have you got a vocal booth? Can Jack Thompson come and do some recording? That's a bus trip joke, sorry. So what the theme is New South Wales Small Business Month, 17th of November, so not the day of the meetup, but a couple of weeks later, is also Social Enterprise Day. So a big part of this will also be trying to help build some hype and how are we actively going to get involved and support Social Enterprise Day, which is also part of Global Entrepreneurship Week. So, say again. And 17th of November is my birthday. And it's also Groove Armada's playing, so that's why the meetup's not on that night, because I need to be at Groove Armada. I most definitely can. Oh, something else. We'll get our people to talk to each other. Sounds good. Excellent. See, collaboration and action, real time. So, the other thing that I need to do a quick shout out on is hopefully people have seen that SECNA, we're hiring for our first ever CEO or exec officer. So if you or somebody you know are that person, I think it's email Marcella. I think it's her email address on it. It's on the website. So if you go to the website, it's got the JD and how to apply and the process and everything else. So if you or somebody you know, we are definitely looking, and it's a pretty major step for SECNA in terms of our ongoing sort of rhythm and sustainability and sort of being able to level up to the next level as well. So anything else I've supposed to have done and haven't done yet? The other thing, which is very important, is we get kicked out of here at 8:30, but we go to the Keg and Brew, which is just on that, only a couple of blocks away down on that street. So we will get kicked out pretty soon. What time are we at? But you don't have to go home because we're going to have a drink. So Keg and Brew, and I think we'll just call it that we'll go upstairs to the, I think it's the 3rd floor where it's the outdoor area. More networking down there, what he said. Awesome. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for your participation. Keep doing the good work. And thanks to everyone online. Great to hang out with you. See you all soon.